Hey guys, welcome back. And today we are going to be answering a viewer's question that is a little bit more personal. And if you guys don't know what I'm doing for the month of December, instead of vlogging for Vlogmas, I am going through and answering all of your burning questions or even personal questions that you guys want to ask me. And if you want to submit a question of your own, you can leave that down in the comment section or email it to contactbrookeandpippa@gmail.com and we will put you in the queue to answer your question. And I'm trying to do this just for Vlogmas, but if this extends further out, if this is something that you guys are really interested in, I will continue doing it. So we have a question today that is a little bit more specific. What type of rig would you recommend for someone over 50 that may be alone and isn't physically able to do any type of heavy, physically taxing daily duties / maintenance? I don't have a huge budget. I'm not able to build out a rig myself. Is a small tow behind the best option for a part-time traveler in this situation? Or would you recommend a van / minivan instead? I do worry if your home and vehicle are one and the same. What would you do in the case of mechanical failure and needing the vehicle itself repaired? Okay, so I think this is a great question, and it is one I've gotten in various forms throughout the time that I have been on the road. So if you guys haven't watched me before, this is just ending up on your feed. I will give you a super quick rundown of everything I've used to travel with. So I started on the road. This isn't like in my entire life. This is just since I've been on the road for the past 5 years. I started in a small Class C. It was a 21-foot Toyota Class C. If you guys are an older group or if you've just seen them because they've gained popularity, I had a Toyota Winnebago. The Toyota Dolphin got really popular during the pandemic, which is why I went with the Toyota Class C. It was small. It was basically the size of a van and could fit in a regular parking spot. And that's what I first got on the road with. I then downsized and did tent camping for a while. I then had the Honda CR-V that a lot of you guys know because that's when I started my YouTube channel. Then I went from the Honda CR-V to a pop-up camper, which a lot of you guys saw as well. Both of those broke down in the same weekend. So I then bought my Honda Pilot and traveled in that Pilot for an additional 6-7 months. And then I ended up getting my red cargo trailer that I built out that I towed with the Pilot. And then I got the Intech Horizon that was also pulled with the Pilot. And then I bought a Nissan Armada that I pulled the Horizon with. The Nissan broke down and then I sold the Horizon. And then I bought my E350 cargo van. And then I traveled in that all the way until I ended up picking up my ambulance that I now am currently using. If that's not enough history, but I think in all of that, I have had a lot of diverse experience with rigs, and I can maybe not answer your question specifically because there are so many types of rigs to travel in because everybody is different and there's going to be something that works perfectly for one type of person and doesn't work at all for the next. And I think the differentiation between part-time and full-time is one of those kind of caveats. I've only ever really done full-time traveling in rigs like this, so that's where I can only answer the question from. But I have towed things. I have had Class C's. I've now had the van kind of life, and I think I'm always going to answer for people who have not tried yet. Simple is better. Always, every single time. A lot of people don't have a huge budget to begin with, and they get really enticed by all of the amenities from some of these other rigs, and you don't even know what you like yet while you're on the road. So it's really hard to pick which amenities are most important to you if you've literally never done it. Now, if you have had some experience in it and you say, like, I cannot go without a bathroom, or I cannot go without a shower, or I need my rig and my car to be separate because I like to do little day trips when I'm traveling. Those are all things to consider, and there are so many. But when you're older and you're doing it by yourself, or even if you're not older and you're just doing it by yourself, simple is always better. When I went from the Class C and then my couple SUVs that I lived in and then had to tow another vehicle, every time I've towed something behind, like as a camper or a cargo trailer or anything like that, and then gone back to something where I don't have to set things up and break things down, it always reminds me the ease of travel is more valuable to me than having more space, if that makes sense. So a lot of people get towables because it expands your space by a ton, and you don't have to then set up, a bunch of tents or a bunch of like canopies or anything like that at your campsite, right? I mostly like boondock, as you guys have seen from my videos and heard me talk about for years and years and years, because I couldn't literally afford camping at all when I first got on the road. So I only could do free camping, which are a little bit rougher roads and do require going in and out of town to pick up supplies. So a lot of the time I figured having something that I could leave at a campsite, like a trailer or something, and I could just use my car to pop into town really quick and get something that I forgot, and I didn't have to bring everything with me just to go back to the same campsite, was something I was interested in. But as much as it's nice to leave it behind, I never, even though I had it locked up and I had everything, ready to go, it never was a fully comfortable feeling for me to leave everything behind in the forest or in the desert somewhere and then hope that it's still there when I came back. I would be lying if I didn't say that that was literally in the back of my mind every single time I was running back to my campsite, to like hope it was there and hope nobody messed with it. Whereas when you're running to town in a Class C or a van or anything like that, you have everything with you, right? I think the other part of that, where people like to have their home and their vehicle separate, is because if something's going on with your home, you always still have your vehicle, or vice versa. Now, that's not really true. So when my Nissan broke down, having a trailer and having no way to transport it, because my towing vehicle was down, was way more anxiety causing than if I had an issue, say, with one of the SUVs, and I could just take it and everything's with me and I don't have to put anything in storage and I don't have to tow something or rent a car to tow something, which you really shouldn't be. I don't think a lot of places like you to do that anyways. Or finding somebody to help me transport it, or buying another vehicle very quickly, which is how I ended up with the van, because we needed something that I could build out to live in and have as my home, but it also needed to tow the trailer because I had to be able to get it somewhere else. And if you don't have a lot of money and you don't want to pay thousands of dollars to have somebody tow it for you, and you don't have a lot of friends wherever you break down, and if it's not at like a paid campsite where you're allowed to sit there, it's just, I don't know. I don't think it's any better. I think honestly, it caused me more anxiety to have all my stuff in my trailer that was a lot of money just sitting in a storage unit, while then I was still living out of a vehicle when I could have just been in that vehicle the entire time. And the hooking up and unhooking process, while it isn't that bad, it's still one extra process you have to do every time you want to move campsites. So it just takes more time. I will always, I think, from now on, having the pop-up camper, the cargo trailer, and the travel trailer probably always default now back to rigs where everything is in one, like the ambulance, where I have basically the size of a regular Class C, or a Class B, I guess. If you guys don't know the different classes, Class C's are usually the ones that have like the head over top, like where your bed's on top, and then like Class B's are more like vans. And I just like having everything with me, as long as everything has its place, because obviously things are going to fall everywhere, and that's like the most annoying part of it all. But even if you just decide to pick up and leave and you just throw everything on your bed and deal with the mess later, you can do it so much faster than hooking and unhooking a trailer and towing. You have to drive so much slower, and there's just more going on with towing. I don't think towing was ever hard. I think if you're a part-time traveler and you say, I want a towable because I want to use whatever vehicle I have for daily driving when I'm at home, and then the camper is already packed and ready to go for the weekends, I actually think that's probably the better scenario for that like your camper is always ready. But I don't think it makes a lot of difference for safety. I don't think it makes a lot of difference for like your stressful of your travel days. I don't think it makes a lot of difference when your car breaks down. Um, because you're gonna eventually have to move that trailer somewhere, even if it's on public lands, even if it's at a paid campsite. And you're gonna need to hire somebody or get your vehicle back so quickly to be able to move it. Whereas if your vehicle breaks down and it's your house, a lot of the times you can talk people into staying in their lot or bringing it back and forth and, finding somewhere to stay. Or if you're just staying at a hotel and your vehicle is just in the shop, you don't have that extra piece of having to move things around. Yes, it's still expensive. Yes, it's still stressful. Yes, it still sucks. But you don't have this other thing that you're needing a vehicle to move. You just need to worry about yourself and your stuff. It's also not, when you just have everything all in one rig, you don't need a lot of physical strength to do much. The hooking and unhooking of the trailer, while you don't need a lot of physical strength per se, you do have to go around and be leveling the trailer and hooking and unhooking it and cranking things. So if you don't have the money to have like everything be on electrics, it does take quite a bit of physical activity to continue walking around and putting all your jacks down and then chalking all the wheels and then doing all this stuff and hooking and unhooking and putting the tongue jack down and up and, moving things a lot more when you have a towable than when I just pull into a campsite in the ambulance. I literally just pull in and park. And if it's not level, I put blocks down and I can literally just drive back over instead of having to hook it back up and realize that it wasn't level. There's just more things that go on with it, I guess. But obviously for people who have families or they need more room, there's going to be a completely different answer. But for somebody just by themselves, a lot of the times I don't think towables are worth it, in my opinion, because I did it by myself pretty much the entire time. And even when I did have help towards the end, it still was my responsibility to go through and check everything, and to make sure that it was done the way that I wanted to do it. So I don't think relying on another person, you're not like completely splitting the tasks all the time. And it's still your responsibility if it's your rig. And if you don't want all of the extra tasks, just having a class A, class B, class C, and just ending it there, I think is probably the better option. Obviously, if you go all the way down to a minivan or an SUV or something like that, the smaller your rig, the easier everything gets set up and take down and travel wise, but you're going to lose all of that room. So if you don't love being outside and you don't bring things to set up to be outside, it can get a little stuffy and hard. So as much as I loved the Pilot and I was so glad for the extra room in the Pilot, the difference between the Pilot and the cargo van is huge. It's like exponential. So if I were to ever go back to another SUV or van or something like that, I would always choose something with the most room I can get in a passenger vehicle, instead of going so small, like back to a Honda CR-V, unless I knew for sure that fuel economy or traveling very quickly was the goal. If you want somewhere to just like set up and chill for a week or two at a time, doing that in a very small SUV, if the weather is bad, gets very depressing very quickly, especially because even I am in the desert right now, as you guys can see in the background, and it was still in the 20s overnight. It's still cold right now, like my fingers are freezing. So while the sun is out and while it's nice out and it's not as cold as anywhere else probably in the country, it's not like these places are immune to weather and being chilly. So sitting outside all the day may not be the most comfortable thing for you. So having a spot that even if you have to sit on the floor in a minivan or a cargo van, if you don't have like an extended roof or something, it's still going to feel more homey and more comfortable than somewhere that you just have to sit in the driver's seat all the time, kind of like I had to do in my CRV when the weather was bad. In the summer, it gets hot, obviously, so being in a car is going to be hotter than sitting outside, even in the shade a lot of the time. So it's all just things that you have to consider. But if you are doing things part-time and you don't mind setting up more outside stuff, you have to remember you have to do the setup, you have to do the takedown. So again, that's requiring physical activity. I would just recommend getting something that is pretty much ready to go already and putting your budget into finding something used, finding something on Facebook Marketplace. This is probably a great time, especially in the winter to the spring. People are going to start to redo their budget for the year and see what kind of extra stuff they have to get rid of. I loved those little Toyotas. The older the vehicle, I know a lot of people like really get like weird about older stuff because they're worried about breaking down and everything like that. But the older things are easier to fix. They're not so complicated. So even when I had my Toyota, I chose that intentionally when I first got on the road, not because I had somebody to come save the day to fix my rig for me if it broke down, but I knew when I took it into a mechanic shop, they are seeing a early 90s vehicle that has very few electronics and new things that are going on. So it's very easy to see and diagnose the problem, and a little bit easier sometimes, depending on which type of rig you pick, to get parts quicker. That's why a lot of people I feel like go with Fords, because there's Ford parts available for a lot of different years pretty widely. And so if you think like the Class C's of today are built on the same setup basically as the E350 I have in the ambulance. So things obviously change year to year, but the year span is so much wider of which parts work with which vehicles that it's easier if you just pop it into a mechanic's that they would maybe have something that could fit or you could use, or you could get it relatively quickly. Now, if you're doing something that's for a much newer vehicle, I would say some of the vehicles that are really new have a lot of different issues that go into it that are not as easily fixed outside of the dealer. I would say most mechanics are used to working on stuff from 2010 and earlier, and then after that it's going to start to get harder because of a lot of the different rules and regulations that went into place and the electronics involved in the vehicle. So having an older vehicle on the road may seem more unreliable, but it is more reliable that you can, a lot of the time, I'm not saying every single one, a lot of the time you can get help, or you can find somebody that can help you relatively quickly. And if you have an interest in it, they are the easiest vehicles to learn on. Some of the very simple things. I don't think you need to be, rebuilding a transmission out in the desert, but you can learn some of the little things that are very easy and cheap to fix yourself. So that's kind of my rant and my spiel. I hope I answered that okay. My vote for anybody who's solo is to go smaller, but not so small that it's uncomfortable, because the smaller your setup is, the easier of a time you're going to have. And then you can always use what you have first and save and work on the road and see how you like it before you decide to upgrade. Everybody is always going to try new things out, or they're always going to long for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. As you guys know, I change all my stuff all the time because I'm always trying to perfect it. And it's just part of this lifestyle of your life changing and you need something else, or something that was working for a really long time doesn't work for you anymore, and you have to kind of move to the next way of life. And I think that's part of the fun of it, although as a viewer I think a lot of people get very confused or annoyed by it, which is fine because you're not the one living it. But don't be afraid to try different rigs, or to go camp out in your driveway in your minivan to see how it's going to work at night when you have to get up and go to the bathroom and you can't just run to the room next to your bed, or that you maybe don't have power or you don't have refrigeration. Those are all things to try, like in the safety of your driveway or at your local campground, or state park that's like super close by. Try it out first and then kind of decide what you want to put your money into. And then you're probably going to want to change it in like 6 months anyways. So I wouldn't get too committed to like, this is my lifetime rig. So I hope this answers a little bit of your question. Again, if you guys have questions, leave them down below, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye!